Hello, friends. Welcome to the Grow Podcast, Season 2.
A season of love.
A season of love. I just love that.
I do too. It's amazing.
I'm Wendy Lovedge.
And I'm Ashley.
So great to see you in Season 2. I can't believe we're here.
Yeah, you know what? Like last season was a blur. And so like getting back into the swing of things, it really feels different for some reason. And, you know, obviously I cut my hair. I don't know if that changes things any.
Well, does it? That's a good question.
I don't know. For me, the hair thing was definitely an interesting change, but I feel good. I feel good.
Yeah, I think, we took a little break at the end of Season 1. We were well prepared to take a break because we pre-recorded everything. So it does feel a little different. It's a 2024 and, perhaps we have a new perspective because it's a new year and a new season and we're focusing on love. And this first episode is about who am I? That's a really profound question.
It is. And I want us to start with asking, who are you?
Who am I?
Yes.
Well, I am heading towards 60 years old and in 2024. And really, it's been quite a journey of self-reflection over many different periods in my life. I feel like I've had several lifetimes in one life, and 60 years seems like such a long time to be on the planet. But I would say, I am a person who really tries to act out of love in all situations. That said, I'm human, and sometimes I realize that I'm not acting out of love, but I spend a lot of time really kind of assessing, what are my goals? What are my values? Who am I? And am I living into that? So it is a lot of self-reflection that happens for me. And I know not everyone is necessarily like that. But I think, while it can get kind of intense sometimes, I think that it's the way that I have found to stay true to myself by doing this assessment regularly and adjusting if I need to. So I added love to the middle of my name on purpose. It's not a name that I was born into or that I was born into. I just added it because I wanted people to say it and see it and see how that, what they think about it. When people say it, I see them kind of light up and I realize it's, it's something that I just added.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I met this guy who was making t-shirts and the words on the t-shirts were on the back. And it said, I love myself, or I'm living into love. And he said he did that because when people are walking away, other people say what's on the back of the shirt.
Yes, yes.
And that got me thinking, oh, I think I'm going to put that in the middle of my name.
I mean, we can all use a little bit more love. So, coming up with innovative ways for us to spark even just the thought of love, I think it's just really beautiful. So I think that's amazing that you did that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So Ashley, who are you?
Golly. I've recent years. So this is my last year in my 30s. So I'm coming up on 40. So it's a pretty profound time for me. And not that every decade isn't, because I think you go through different versions of yourself each decade as you come into the next decade. But my 30s has been about discovering who I am. And this is probably my first intentional cycle of going through that process. And I realized like over, let's say the next 20 to 30 years, I'll go through multiple versions of that if I stay intentional about that. And I'm very interested in how that evolves. Like, who will I be
Mm.
in the next 20 to 30 years? But right now, identity wise, I have literally spent 10 years deconstructing my identity and figuring out what makes up me. And so a large part of who I am, like in the physical plane, is like I'm a nurse and I'm a mom and I'm a woman. Um, and beyond those like identities that are associated with me, it I just am, and I'm here and I'm participating.
In this season, we're talking about love, and, self love is really, I think, the most important piece in there when we're talking about love. And you really have to know who you are to love yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that there are many ways that people sort of avoid that. And in the next segment, we're going to talk a little more about the shadow self and how it can interfere with love and self love.
Yeah.
But I think it's a journey, and maybe it's good to pause every decade and say, well, who am I? And maybe just brainstorm and write it all down. I don't know if that speaks to you at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think writing it down. So I actually did write it down in my book, Stigmatized. That was kind of what sparked. It
Right.
was based off of the identities that the ones that I mentioned earlier. Those were the main ones that I identified with early in my 30s. And there was a little bit of fear around uncovering what else was there, who else was in there, what other identities I could take on. And I remember when I first wrote Stigmatized, and people would call me an author, and I'd be like, no, that I'm not really an author. Like, but it was a new identity that for some reason I resisted.
Hmm.
And so like my takeaway is not necessarily that everybody will go through something like that, but sometimes we get so complacent in the identities that society put upon us that we don't ever consider alternative or expanded versions.
Hmm.
Another example of that is like children. So I'm a daughter as well,
Hmm.
right? And so operating in the role of a daughter as a child versus a daughter as an adult there has to be a process of redefining what that looks like,
Hmm.
because it cannot be the same version of 10-year-old me, you know?
Right. And it's
Um,
challenging with
mhm,
parents who still see you many times as a young person.
mhm.
It's that bridge is hard to cross sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And because it's so challenging, sometimes we're not up for the challenge. Sometimes we just don't have the capacity for the challenge of
Right.
whatever that, the role identity is.
And we might
And
not be at that moment,
mhm,
and then it can be revisited
later.
later. It's
Yeah.
interesting. So I started my journey into trying to understand and discover myself and grow also at 30. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And those years between 30 and 40, I had my day of reckoning with myself. It was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And understanding my chameleon or shadow self and trying to put it to sleep, and just yeah, I think that can be a really prime time for people. That's really the first window spiritually that opens. It is on the decades.
Mm,
30 is really the first window where people will start to grow and change. Not everybody answers that call, you
yeah.
know, and because maybe they're not ready to really know themselves.
Yeah. Or society just makes it challenging to even do it, right? Like to have the space
Oh,
and the time.
mm-hmm.
And this is prime time for child rearing for a lot of people.
Yes.
Like people are still climbing in their careers, trying to grow their careers. So a lot of time, 40 plus hours plus another, 24 hours a day goes into areas that aren't you. So
Right.
to find time to focus on you, that's a real chore.
Someone decides to go on this journey of really discovering who they are, be gentle. There's no race. There's no deadline, right?
Yeah.
You can do it or not do it. God still loves you. It's um, whatever you choose, and just take it one step at a time and be gentle.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, especially for people who are really goal oriented, where it's like, I'm trying to get here. And it's like, but where are you going? What are
Hmm.
you trying to actually do? And when you get there, what's going to happen? Because there's always going to be something more on the other side. Like,
Hmm.
it's like life doesn't end. It's always an evolving cycle. And I feel like as soon as you realize that, the sooner you'll kind of settle. Like I think it took me a while to realize that. I was like, wait.
Wait, did I meet my goal? Am I finished?
Right.
Right, right. Well, there'll be more after the break. I remember when I reached a point in my spiritual journey where I looked in the mirror and I really didn't know who I was anymore because I had been peeling back the layers and looking within so much. Really, that was the starting point, and I have never looked back. It really is helpful when you can take the time to look within and understand yourself. That's the road to true happiness, finding your path, and being who you were really meant to be.
Have you ever thought about consuming cannabis but was worried about smoking it or eating it? Or maybe you just want to give your lungs a break, or you had a really bad edible experience. As a healthcare professional, I am very conscious of the multiple ways of dosing your medicine. One of the ways that you can consume cannabis is through a transdermal patch. This is not often talked about. The cool thing about transdermal is that there is a 97% bioavailability to this type of consumption method. Now, the problem is finding a trusted resource to facilitate your consumption. And guess what? I found a product that I support. It's called Synergy Skinworks. It's a cannabis delivery system that works effortlessly since the medicine goes where the blood flows. Patch on, peace out.
And we're back. We are in a season of love, and we are talking about who am I, about knowing yourself, and how that corresponds to self-love. So I thought it'd be good to talk a little more about the shadow self or chameleon self and how it can kind of interfere with this process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the shadow self. So a lot of us are scared of our shadow. Um, and it's interesting because the shadow is us.
Hmm.
But we want to label it as good or bad, or we want to define it as something that's good or bad, so bad that we don't want to deal with it. And like I just think it's such a fascinating aspect of who we are, because I think that's what creates the balance in who we are.
Hmm.
And as long as, I had a thought recently. We talked in a previous episodes in season 1 about toxic positivity.
Hmm.
And I think that's an example of ignoring the shadow of what positivity can be, which is negativity, right? And if you put positivity and negativity together, it creates a balance, because those are just concepts in the physical plane. So I don't know. In recent months dealing with like trying to confront my own certain shadows, because there's always more shadows to uncover, right? Like, so similar to becoming more aware and loving yourself and knowing yourself, there's always an aspect of you that lies dormant or outside of your perception. And it drives who you are when you are angry, when you're stressed,
Hmm.
when you're, all those things where we're like, yeah, I didn't act out of love in that moment. Well, what did you act off of?
Hmm.
And usually the opposite of that is some sort of fear response.
Right.
And
Oh,
drives the
absolutely.
shadow. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I always say fear and love are inversely proportional.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really fearful, it's hard to access the love, you know. And if you're in a really loving space, the fear diminishes. Um, and you know, the shadows, I feel, just really bring that fear up, and then it makes it hard to access the more loving aspects of yourself. Um, but you know, the shadow self protected us in
True.
difficult situations, right? And yet we can't really make friends with it because it's really based out of fear and negativity. And the more you, if you make friends with it, that will grow, right? Whatever you
Yeah.
putting your eye on, that's what's going to grow. You know,
Fact.
so figuring out that balance and kind of you know, realizing that when your shadow self is elevated, you're seeing life through that lens,
Yeah.
and you project that onto other people. You don't really see the truth of situations, and it's only love that can bring it down.
Yeah. And usually love of self, right? Like,
Hmm.
and it usually has nothing to do with whoever else is involved
Oh
because,
yeah, right.
like, so you're responding out of fear or anger or whatever it is. And that person, the receiver, whoever you're dealing with,
Mhm.
responds back with some sort of low vibrational emotional energy. And then we escalate it together, right? And so then we walk away wanting to point the finger at the other person because they did something we didn't like, but we don't take the time to recognize our participation in the experience.
Mhm.
And so, and that's where observation comes into play too, because you can very easily, make yourself feel bad because you had this low vibrational experience, you participated, you engaged with it. But that's where recognizing that we're human comes into play, and compassion comes into play, and loving yourself comes into play. Even when we're not showing up in perfection, then, you know, can I still love myself regardless of when I don't show up in perfection?
Right, right, right. Realizing that your own humanness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So you know, if the shadow self is elevated, like ways that you can kind of notice, usually, you know, you might feel a little uneasy, a little more negative. You're not really perceiving things the way they are because you're looking at life through that lens.
Yeah.
And there's so many. The best way to reduce it is with love, as we mentioned, right? So how do you do that, right? So first you have to notice that it's interfering with your perception of the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really, once you're aware of it, that's like really the first step, you know, being aware that, okay, I'm you know, heightened because something, you know, has stirred up my shadow self and my negativity, and I'm not really able to respond the way I normally would.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a little bit of, you know, really noticing, and then you know, it can't deal with when you shine love on yourself. So, you know, stop for a minute and do the Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian prayer, you know, I'm sorry, I forgive you, I love you, thank you. Like, say it repeatedly because it's not going to be able to continue to interfere while you're, you know, kind of, you know, understanding that you're going to bring it down, right? And you're going to
Mm-hmm.
shine some love, and you're telling yourself that you love yourself. So that's one little tool that could be used. But can you think of other ways that you can show love to yourself to kind of bring it down?
Yeah. So, really, I think that what you said is absolutely spot on, but sometimes it's hard to see it. So one of the things that's been significantly helpful to me is when I'm in those moments of pause to listen to what other people are saying about me,
Hmm.
right? Like when people come to you, like people will tell you when like you're doing something that's off-putting or that they feel something in response to you, they'll let you know. They might not say like, I hate you because you do this thing, but they'll be like, yeah, I noticed that, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of times the first thing that comes to mind is to defend it, to protect it, to, to not allow that thing to show, because we had like you said earlier, because it protected us. So we need to protect it. And so when you hear those things, say, okay, you know what, right now I'm going to listen. And whether they're right or wrong, that's for you to evaluate. Or it's not even about rightness or wrongness. It's about, is this something that I want to continue to be part of of me, who I am, how I express myself, and how I engage. So that's been really helpful, instead of just responding so quickly to other people, just saying, you know what? Okay, I hear you. And not necessarily having to do something in response, but assessing that on your own time in meditation, in prayer, whenever you're doing your self-care. And I think that really is an act of self-love.
I think the main thing is, be open and curious.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are behaving in a way that doesn't feel like yourself, doesn't feel like it's out of love, pause and assess and see what you can learn from that. And when you don't live into it and make friends with it, it will reduce over time. You may have moments where something really triggers you or really like gets you going, but you have these tools to kind of bring it down, and you recognize that it's not really you.
Yeah.
The shadow self, the chameleon self, it's not really you. It's that part of you that took the brunt of situations you didn't understand as a child, or abusive situations, or bad accidents, whatever. It can be something really small, and and so the more you bring it down and eventually put it to sleep, the better it is for you. You can be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. See, ultimate self-love right there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we're going to take another break and we'll be back.
Have you ever asked yourself this question? A lot of times when I ask myself this question, it's coming from a space of self-reflection. In those moments, I have to reevaluate my belief system, my values, and my experiences. And to be honest with you, whenever I ask myself this question, the answer is never the same. I'm never the same person that I was even the day before.
Hey there, Wendy Jo, co-host of the Grow podcast. Also, Wendy Edge, occupational therapist. And I wanted to tell you about my new business where I'm combining the principles of occupational therapy, coaching, and spirituality, and wellness, of course. On the website, you'll see that I'm doing Osho Zen card readings, spiritual coaching, spirit paintings, and so much more. So if you want, check it out, edgecoachingandconsulting.com.
Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The High Align Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
And we're back. We are in a season of love, and we've been talking about who am I. So I'm going to ask you again.
Okay.
Who are you?
I am just a being trying to live in this life. At the end of the day, I don't know. I started off talking about like, all right, my identity, and that was a big part of it. But I think ultimately I just am here, just trying to live a human experience, and it should be enjoyable. And if I'm always in a space of like, let's say anger or frustration or something along those lines, am I really enjoying it? Am I really caring for myself? Am I really being who I'm supposed to be? Because I think at the end of the day, because we talked about it earlier, like that goalpost that shifts, you're never just one person. You're always going to be somebody different. And especially if you choose to evolve and to grow and to quell that shadow self and do that internal personal work, I don't know if that answer is ever anything more than I just am here and I'm just me right now in this moment. And so I think the key to living in life, I always tell people this, is to enjoy it. We eat because it tastes good. We
Yeah.
feel things because it feels good. We like to listen to music. All of our senses evoke sensations, and our experience drives the decisions that we make moving forward. But we don't have to be boxed in. We can do whatever we want.
So true. I always say we're supposed to be happy. We're meant to be, you know, to live a happy life.
Mm-hmm.
And yet many people would say they don't feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when it's important to do that assessment and figure out why you feel that way and who you are and what you need. And sometimes we need a little help, you know. I do inner child work with people, brain spotting to help heal trauma and help people with this self-discovery process.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with me. Holistic life coaching,
Yes.
helping people understand their human design, um, nurturing spiritual and entrepreneurial development.
Mhm.
I think our roles go underutilized in many cases. But like, for example, if you needed a basketball coach to help you, like they're not going to run the field with you. They're not going to play the game with you, but they're going to give you the techniques to help you be most successful.
Yes.
And I think you and I both approach that work very differently. But at the end of the day, we're here to support people while they're on that journey. So that way, they don't have to go it alone. Because I think the most isolating thing is to deconstruct your identity and not know where you belong and get yourself stuck because fear gets in the way. And then you end up doing the same thing that you were doing before. The
Right.
same thing that evoked the need to change in the first place. And
Right.
then 20, 30, 40, 50 years pass and you're still in the same place, identifying as the same person, never having experienced life on your terms.
Mm.
Right. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to ask for some help and reach out. It is an internal process in many ways, and you are the key ingredient. But sometimes it just helps to have the perspectives and someone who has been through it also and has some tools that maybe you hadn't thought of. So I hope that everyone has a better sense of trying to figure out how to answer that question, who am I? And that it really helps on your spiritual journey.
Yes, I do too. Even if it's just a matter of now I know who I am, or I know I need to go journal on who I am right now.
Right, for sure. Well, I'm Wendy Lovett.
And I'm Ashley.
And we are so glad that you joined us today for the Grow Podcast. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.